Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about diction. Diction is the third pillar of technique that I like to dive into with my students. When we're talking about diction, it's really critical because diction takes raw sound and forms it into language. That's why it's so important for singers to think about. And we all come to diction and language with our own preconceived notions and ideas. So when we're singing, we want to think about, first and foremost, how we're elongating the sound and what we're using as a vehicle to carry that sound. So we spend a lot of time in singing on vowels. Most of our work is going to be concerning vowels. When we deal with consonants, we want to make sure that we're crisply creating the consonants quickly and specifically and using the most efficient mechanic possible. Now, so why we're going to talk about vowels most of the time? Obviously, as I said, we sing on the vowels. We elongate the language by phonating on that one specific shape that is the vowel sound. Now, this is the point in the conversation where I always ask students, in the standard American English language, how many vowel sounds do we have? Now, most students will immediately say A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes Y. So they give me 6, and I tell them, haha, you missed the little qualifier. How many vowel sounds do we have? Not how many vowels in the standard American English language. So in our lexicon, if you pick up any random vowel and you pick a random piece of paper, so for example, I'm just going to grab the first thing I see in my studio, and of course it's not in English, so let me grab the second thing I see in my studio. And I'm going to pick a random vowel. So random vowel A. So I'm looking at the CD, and on the CD it's sacred, S-A-C-R-E-D. Then I have Dan, so A. The next word is arise, A-R-I-S-E, arise. Next time I see an A cradle, carol. So we have so many different actual sounds and emanating from one specific vowel. So as singers, we have to think really hard about the actual sound, not just the letter. So we're not thinking the letter, we're thinking the phonetics. And this is one reason, by the way, that most voice teachers will start young singers singing in Italian. A lot of singers get excited, oh, I'm singing my Italian piece. Well, the reality is your Italian piece is really functional because what it does is it gives you a language that you don't have much, most people don't have a relationship to the Italian language, so they can look much more objectively at it. Also, the vowels are very predictable and very specific. So with English, depending on your dialect, that can be an can be an in different regions in the country. And we also have issues where, depending on the dialect, you might have what's called diphthongs or triphthongs. So if I'm in the South, there's a lot of vowels happening for vowel sounds happening for one specific vowel. So you want to be really careful that you're thinking about the specific vowel that you're talking about, vowel sound, and leaning on only one of them and not moving between different iterations that would happen in that word. So that can be pretty tricky. Those diphthongs and triphthongs are easy to trip over. So be really careful that you're thinking about the center of the vowel. And again, it's why we use Italian a lot, because they don't really have a lot of diphthongs and triphthongs in the language. And you can be much more objective when you're reading the language to sing specifically the vowel you see for the duration of the pitch. Okay, so when we're talking about vowels, there are a few technical things you need to know. First of all, we discuss vowels in terms of the physiology that we use to produce them. When you're thinking about diction, I want you to think about the technique occurring from the center of your face forward. I don't want you to think about the work that happens behind where my fingers are. I don't want you thinking about the jaw or the back of the tongue for the vast majority of languages. Even when we're talking about a language like German where you might have a we don't want to think too much about that because the jaw and the tongue are real areas of problem for a lot of singers. So we don't want to overemphasize them because they will develop an outsized relationship with the production of sound if you bring them to the party. So we try to keep them, in the background. Obviously the jaw is going to help with formation of sound and language, but we don't want to give it too much attention. So the articulators that we're going to talk about, specifically the tongue, the teeth, the lips, and the hard palate. The hard palate is that little area, if you stick your finger in your mouth, you'll feel your teeth. The back of the teeth is the alveolar ridge, and a little further back is the hard palate. So you'll feel that hard surface. Now, in terms of what we actually use to create language, we use our lips and we use our tongue because they are malleable. So you want to think about the use of the lips and the tongue for the formation of language. When we get into vowels, we categorize them as lip vowels or tongue vowels. Ah, as in the word father. A, as in the word say. As in the word set. And E, as in the word see. Oo, as in the word sue. O, as in the word so. And aw, as in the word saw. Now, any good observer of vowels and articulation would have noticed that in the tongue vowels, I presented them as open and closed, going from the most open vowel to the most closed vowel. I did the opposite with the lip vowels. I went the most closed to the most open. So the most open the most open tongue vowel, ah, intermediary, a, e. Now, if you notice my mouth, I don't have to do anything to create externally to create those vowels. Ah, e. My jaw doesn't open or close. Ah, e. Moving from the most open to the most closed. The only thing that really moves is my tongue. And we're going in terms of tongue position from the most open space with the ah, maintaining the connection of the tongue tip to the lower teeth, ah, and then to shift to the E, I'm taking the sides of the tongue and moving it up to touch the bottom of the top teeth, E. The E vowel is one of my favorite things to train singers on because it's really specific. So the E vowel is going to tell you if you're singing in tune. The problem with those open vowels is they become amorphous and relatively ambiguous. So it's very easy for them to tune flat. So for example, if I'm starting a pitch on ah, and I'm singing ah, and I just so happen to let that vowel darken a little bit to that has a tendency to lean dark, and when you lean dark, it can frequently sound flat. So I do a lot of training for my singers on E because the margin of error is very narrow. You're going to sing the E and it's going to be right in the center of the pitch most of the time. So if you have pitch issues, sing on the E vowel and train on the E vowel. Now, if you're trying to deal with issues of musicianship, I love vowel consonant combinations. And one of my favorite vowel consonant combinations would be DDD. So the reason I use DDD is because the D is a percussive sound and the E is that specific vowel again. So DDD will help me know if the singer is landing on the right pitch at exactly the right time. There's very little ambiguity in training with that. So DDD is very common when you're talking about dealing with musicianship issues and like pitch and rhythm together. It's a fabulous training, like training wheels, vowel consonant combination training. Now, getting back to tongue versus lip, open versus closed. So lip vowels, oo, o, ah. And you'll see that I always say I look like a fish when I sing these. So when you're using your lip vowels, make sure that the lion's share of the work is happening on the sides of the lips. Ooh, oh, ah. The meaty part of the lips are fairly relaxed. So as I'm articulating, I want to make sure that I am using these muscles here to really form that language and that diction. So why does diction matter? Again, super critical because it helps you tune, it helps you elongate pitch and gives you a vehicle and a vessel for your sound. And it can also really help you define your style. And we'll talk a little bit more about style in future videos, but this is a good primer, basic understanding of diction. Diction's critical, articulation is critical because it helps you phonate for a longer duration of time, which is essentially the difference between your articulated voice and your modulated voice. So that's enough for today. Hopefully you learned something about diction and why, as a musical director and a voice teacher, it's one of the most critical areas of study for all singers.